21 days of effective communication. Everyday habits and exercises to improve your communication skills and social intelligence. We have read chapter 1, day 1 of effective communication, 21 days of effective communication, and now we have to proceed for next day 2. First chapter includes effective listening, how to be a good listener, how to let the other person spoke about whatever he is feeling. Overall, be a good listener. It totally depends upon you that how you are giving space to your friends to speak about whatever they are feeling. तो हमने पढ़ लिया था और हमें इस पे प्रैक्टिस करने के लिए बोला था. आज हम पढ़ेंगे डे 2. डे 2 इफेक्टिव कम्युनिकेशन. 21 डेज ऑफ इफेक्टिव कम्युनिकेशन में डे 2 में फर्स्ट चैप्टर हमने पढ़ा था. डे 1 में वो था इफेक्टिव लिसनिंग या बिकम अ गुड लिसनर. आज पढ़ेंगे डे 2 काउंट द नंबर ऑफ टाइम्स यू इंटरप्ट अदर पीपल. मतलब आप किसी की बातचीत में नंबर ऑफ टाइम्स कितनी बार आप उसे इंटरप्ट करते हैं, ये आपको काउंट करना है. ये अपनी कम्युनिकेशन स्किल्स को इम्प्रूव करने के कुछ रूल्स बताए गए हैं. इफ़ यू हैड टू आइडेंटिफाई द मोस्ट अनोइंग कम्युनिकेशन हैबिट एवर, what would it be? Admittedly, there are a lot of contenders, but most of us agree that being interrupted is among the most irritating. Today, you are going to examine how often you interrupt other people and then work on giving your conversation partner the time and space they deserve. Interrupting people is easy to do. For example, if you participate in a heated discussion, thank you so much. नहीं नहीं ये नेल पेंट्स हैं. Thank you so much for your concern. Let's read. If you participate in heated discussion, you might want to jump right in to exert your voice. If you are passionate about an idea, your enthusiasm might bubble to the surface. But there is but that is where the challenge lies. Even if your ideas are excellent, your conversation partner will be too annoyed to give them the attention they deserve if you interrupt. By your interruptions, you are in, insinuating that your thought and ideas are more important than theirs. As you know from personal experience, interruption derails your train of thoughts. Interrupt, Interruption also makes someone feel disrespected. If someone values you and your ideas, they will at least have the courtesy to let you finish speaking, right? You need to apply the same principle when actively listening to others. जो खुद नोवेयर से वो जरा कहाँ से हुआ. Interruption also makes someone feel disrespected. If someone values you and your ideas, they will at least have some courtesy to let you finish speaking, right? You need to apply the same principle when actively listening to others. Interrupting can completely kill your chances of developing a good relationship with someone else, and that is not an exaggeration. If they feel as though you are more interested in steamrolling over them with your personal point of view instead of getting to know them, they will start to withdraw from you. Here's how to kick the interruption habit. Set targets and give yourself rewards. Set a realistic goal and choose a small reward as suitable incentive. For example, you could promise yourself that you make it through the day interrupting people fewer than 10 times. You will pick up your favorite magazine or candy bar the way home. Stick up signs. The simplest solution can be the best. I keep a small sticky note on my computer monitor to remind me not to interrupt other. It features a sketch of a closed mouth just beneath an ear. I glance at it when I am on the phone or webcam. It reminds me that if I strive to grow my relationship and my business, I need to let other people speak. Write down any points you want to make in advance. While you can't take notes during an unplanned conversation, you can take a list with you to a scheduled meeting. When you know that your key points are strategically bulleted on a piece of paper, it is easier to refrain from interrupting. Third, write down any points you want to make in advance. ये तो पढ़ लिया हमने. In formal meeting, you can also make notes for your thoughts when someone else is speaking. Once they have finished, you can then refer to your notes and ask for clarification. Remember that your silence is just as influential as your voice. No one like a show off or a person who appears to love the sound of their own voice. On the other hand, everyone respects someone who lets other people speak and exercises cautions when offering their own opinion. If the thought of keeping quiet terrifies you, consider that your interruption habit might spring from a sense of insecurity. Some chronic interruption feel the pressure to prove that they have thought of their own or even that they have earned a place in the room. Does this sound familiar? If so, your interruption habit might be more than just an annoying quirk. It might be time to examine any underlying feelings of inferiority and address them, either by yourself or by the assistance of a qualified therapist. ये चैप्टर भी छोटा है. Practice biting your tongue. The phrase bite your tongue can be taken literally here. When you feel the urge to interrupt, sandwich your tongue between your teeth, and sensation will act as a constant reminder not to butt in. Cultural differences. The advice I am given in this chapter assume that you and those around you have been raised in a culture that interrupts interruption as a sign of rudeness. Most Westerners would agree that it's good manner to let someone else finish speaking before responding. However, it is useful to remember that there are cultural differences in how people perceive interruptions. For instance, some cultural regards interruption and cross talks as normal. To give two specific examples, Those of Italian descent tend to see interruption as an acceptable way of showing interest in a topic. Meanwhile, people raised within Japanese culture often believe that it is acceptable to interrupt someone to ask for clarification. When you meet someone who seems specifically quick to interrupt, consider the possibility that there is a culture gap. It isn't appropriate to ask someone to describe their family's heritage, but just knowing that these differences exist can help you remain calm and patient. You can bridge the gap by making an explicit request, such as I have got something really important to say and don't want to forget anything. So, if you have any question, could you please save them for the end? Today exercise is really simple, or at least it is simple in theory. Count how many times you interrupt other people in all your conversation and then use the tips above to stop yourself. Ideally, you should try to talk with at least 3 people. If you can do this while in a group, even better. The first time I tried this exercise, I was dismayed to discover that I struggled to even let people finish their sentences. My intentions weren't to be rude or annoying, but my conversation partner must have been thoroughly irritated. Unless I make an effort to keep myself in check, I still catch myself interrupting other a bit too often. It is a touch habit to break, but your friends and family will thank you for it. Who knows, you might learn something new if you master the art of keeping your mouth shut. So what we have to do now, that whenever someone speaking or whenever we are in group discussion, if some people is continuously talking to us or explaining about some topics, some ideas, then we need to stop to interrupt them in between the conversation. So we have to practice this. And the first chapter, we read we how to be a good listener first for effective communication, and in second chapter we read about stopping ourselves to interrupt any person. Next chapter will be next but not the least. This is included in this one. When it comes to politics and social issues, we all have our own opinions. Yet, one thing most of us can agree on is that everyone, regardless of their background or individual characteristics, deserve to be treated with respect. Today, you will learn about the importance of inclusive communication. What is inclusive communication anyway? In nutshells, a good inclusive communicator takes care not to alienate or offend an entire group of people based on their personal attributes. They do not make assumptions based on the individual characteristics. Inclusive communication acknowledges and values diversity. Mastering this skill is increasingly important in the 21st century. Thanks to globalization, people from all backgrounds now work and socialize together. Inclusive communication builds harmonious relationship between individuals and it even boosts business performance. Research reflects a positive correlation between gender diversity, ethnic diversity, and profit in organization. Tips for inclusive communication. Don't emphasize a characteristics if it isn't necessary to do so. For example, let's suppose that you are telling your team that An employee from another department is scheduled to work with them on a new project. This employee, a man called Sam, happens to be gay. It would not be appropriate to say, Sam, the gay guy from Department X, will be joining us on Monday. Sam's sexual orientation is not relevant to his work. So, drawing attention to this characteristics is not necessary. Don't assume a person's gender or sexual orientation. Choose gender neutral terms if possible. For example, if your manager is leaving the company and you do not yet know the gender of this replacement, it is more appropriate to use they in reference to the possible candidate instead of he or she until a permanent replacement is selected. Do not assume that a person is heterosexual. It is better to use like partner or significant other instead of boyfriend, wife, and so on. If you need to talk about someone's disability, do so in neutral terms. It is true that many people with disabilities do suffer as a result, but it is presumptuous to make statements such as Peter suffers from epilepsy or Mary is afflicted with some disease name schizophrenia. Schizophrenia. Focus on a person, not any disabilities they might have. Do not define someone by their conditions or illness. For example, it is better to say Pat has depression rather than Pat is depressive or Pat is depressed. And more मेरे लाइफ में तो ऐसे बहुत सारे लोग हैं जो डायरेक्टली बोलते हैं भाई, किसी के बॉडी शेमिंग पे बोल देते हैं, किसी की मतलब फिजिक में कोई अगर डिसेबिलिटीज़ है, कुछ डिफेक्ट है, तो वो उसको बोल देते हैं। ये नहीं समझ में आता कि इसका मेंटली कितना इम्पैक्ट पड़ता है। सामने वाले को अच्छा लगता है, नहीं अच्छा लगता है, वो मुस्कुरा के हट जाता है मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम। मेरे साथ भी खुद ऐसा हुआ है। तो वी नीड टू अवॉइड दिस। किसी की पर्सनल डिसेबिलिटी पे हमें उसे एम्फेसाइज करके उसे इंट्रोड्यूस कराने की ज़रूरत नहीं है। Do not uphold stereotypes. Making assumptions based on someone's nationality, ethnicity, or other characteristics is offensive because it shows a lack of respect for someone's individual talent and personality. This philosophy stays true even of positive stereotypes. For example, if you meet a Chinese accountant, it would be inappropriate to suggest that Chinese people naturally make good accountant accountants because Asian are so good at math. So respect for race and ethnicity through proper capitalization in written communication. For instance, Native American Black and Torres Straits Islanders should always be capitalized. If in doubt, look up the terms in a dictionary or use a reputable online resource. Be mindful of context. Bear in mind that in some instances it is acceptable for members of a group to use words that would be offensive if used by outsider. For example, some members of the LGBT plus community refers to themselves as queer. However, this word is usually considered offensive if used by a heterosexual person and not at all as LGBT plus. People accept it in the first place. If in doubt, any loaded terms that have historically been used to insult or belittle others are best avoided. Avoid patronizing individuals or group of people. If you have a disability, you might have heard some describe you as brave or inspiring for carrying out normal day-to-day tasks such as cleaning your home, going to work, or exercising at the gym. I have a cousin who walked with a cane following a car accident several years ago. Several well-meaning people have praised him for being an inspiration. Their intentions are good, but my cousin just feel patronized. Do not assume that just because someone has disability and that they want to be recognized for merely existing. Is inclusive communication really necessary? I respect the fact that some people think inclusive communication is too politically correct. However, whenever your personal views land you on quickly, find yourself in trouble if you do not use inclusive communication. For instances, using sexist language in the workplace could land you in hot water with HR or earn you a reputation as someone who doesn't keep up with modern etiquette. Why making offensive joke is harmful even if you really are only joking. Over the years, I have met a few people who claim that it is acceptable to make offensive joke or stereotype group of people as long as you don't really hold offensive views. But here's something to think about. People who do support negative stereotypes and hold racist, sexist, or other offensive views will feel justified whenever they hear such jokes. This means that racism, sexism, and other forms of bigotry are unchallenged. Do not make jokes that rely on disparagement humor, and let others know that you don't find them funny. Put it into practice. Do you express assumption or stereotype when talking about particular groups? The next time you take part in a conversation that includes a discussion about other people, consider whether your choice of word is respectful. Could you be a more inclusive communicator? If applicable, make a note of where and how you could improve next time around. Exercise 2. Switch on the TV or go on YouTube and find a show that features a lot of dialogue. Watch it for 15 to 20 minutes. Are the people talking part is conversation upholding any negative views or belief about particular groups? Do you hear similar language in your everyday interaction? If so, how could you challenge it? अब आ गए हम डे 4 पे हाउ टू एक्सपेंड योर वोकेबलरी. You will be judged more favorably in social situation if you can demonstrate a broad vocabulary. Most people assume higher level of education and intelligence when a person knows the meaning of many words and can use them correctly within the scope of normal conversation. Those who understand and appreciate complex words and phrases are at a real advantage both personally and professionally. Today, you will learn why a big vocabulary is valuable asset and how to add more words to your personal dictionary. Why your vocabulary really does make a difference. There is a link between vocabulary and occupational success. A study of linguistic and education researcher Johnson O'Connor found that people who achieve high scores on vocabulary text are significantly more likely to be obtain high level position in workplace. This finding still applies when gender, age, and even of schooling are controlled. Schol- Schooling or control. Even more interesting, vocabulary test performance predicts success. It is not just a byproduct of working in senior position or encountering with educated people. So, what is going on here? In a nutshell, a strong vocabulary is the best foundation for communication, and communication is the starting point for success. When you have more words at your disposal, you are in better position to deliver exactly the right message. The richer your vocabulary, the more accomplished you will become in communicating nuanced ideas and understanding new lines of thoughts and reasons. Some Someone with a wide vocabulary can tailor their oral and written communication to a range of audiences, meaning that they can grow productive relationship with other and allow them to flourish. A wide vocabulary also allows you to absorb information from complex sources, which provide you with the tools you need to improve your personal and professional skills. For example, if you are comfortable reading and interrupting high level textbook, you are more interpreting high level textbook, you are more likely to be benefit from advanced education and training than people who only recognize common everyday words. When you are familiar with complex words, your reading speed will also improve because you won't have to pause to define a word obvious, right? Here are a few strategies that will help you out. Use a new word every day. Get into the habit of looking up a new word each morning and then using it at some point during the day. If it is a particularly obscure word and you can't fit into a conversation naturally, at least tell someone that you learned a cool new word and then tell them what is what it means. Use apps and online games to expand your vocabulary. There are hundreds of free apps and games designed to help users learn new words. One of my favorite is freerise.com. It is simple multiple choice game that tests your vocabulary. The more question you get right, the more difficult the question become. If you give an incorrect answer, the site will show you where you went wrong. As an added bonus for every correct answer you give, site's founders donate a small amount of rice to people in need. Vocabulary.com, 7littlewords.com, and words with friends too. Zynga.com are all popular apps that make learning new words simple. Become a word enthusiast. Learning words in isolation will help grow your vocabulary, but gaining a deeper appreciation of a word structure and roots will put you in a good position to understand new words you encounter in the future. That is why I'm reading this book. And I would like to read books in English. However, I used to speak Hindi every day as well as Bhojpuri. But I always prefer to read English textbooks to improve my vocabulary as well as my pronunciation, everything, as well as my communication as well. Yeah. When you first learn a word, break it down to its constituent parts. For example, the word orthostatic means relating to or caused by an upright posture. If you break the word apart, you will see that its fusion of ortho, which means straight, and static, which means concerned with bodies at rest. Learning the definition of prefixes and suffixes will help you decipher new words. Read widely. This is a classic piece of advice for anyone who wants to sound intelligent and educated. Don't stick to the same book and magazine that you normally read. Challenge yourself by exploring new topics, by reading denser and more challenging text. Set aside at least 15 minutes of reading time each day. In my opinion, there is no excuse not to read. Not only does it improve your vocabulary, but it will also help you become a well rounded individual capable of conversing with virtually anyone. If you aren't sure what a word means, ask. It is normal to feel embarrassed when someone uses a word that you don't recognize, but it is golden opportunity to learn something new. If someone tries to make you feel inferior on the basis that you don't happen to know what a word means, then that is their problem. If you really can't ask at the same time, at least make a note of the word and look it up later in your dictionary. Put it into practice. Today I want to let you, let I want you to learn 5 new words and then incorporate them into your spoken or written communication. Take a look at the apps and websites mentioned in the chapter and commit to using one of them for at least 5 minutes each day for a week. Day 5. Swap but or and embrace yet. Sometimes it is a little things that make a huge difference. Today, I am going to draw your attention to but and yet. The word we choose shape not only how other people see us, but how we see ourselves. When you when you master the art of positive communication, the world will start to appear more welcoming. You will begin seeing opportunities rather than problems, and other people will be drawn to your proactive, upbeat personality. You don't have to believe that these tips will work. Just put them into practice and see the differences for yourself. But and positive communication. How often do you hear people say statements? But statements? Here are few examples. I would love to go on vacation, but I am scared of flying. I would like to go back to school, but I don't have any free time. I want to run a marathon, but I am so out of shape. In each of these statements, speakers ascribe a particular explanation to a problem or situation. They assert the because they assert that they are scared of flying, they can't go on vacation, or that they have no free time, so they can't go to school, or they are not out of shape and therefore cannot run a marathon. What most people don't realize is that a typical but statement is unnecessarily limiting and negative. This become more apparent if you take out but and then insert and instead. Take the first example in the list above. I would love to go on vacation, but I'm scared to fly. Swap but for and you notice the difference immediately. Day 5. I would love to go on vacation and I am scared to fly. The revised version suggests that the speaker just so happened to be afraid of flying, plus they want to go on vacation. It is subtle difference, but it matters. It indicates that the person has a desire plus a problem to be solved, rather than a desire that will be thwarted by their problem. When I start working with a client, I often notice that they parrot the same old but statement repeatedly. They become our own personal stories, excuses that we don't question. We assume that they are true and taken them to heart as the gospel truths. These intrinsic beliefs become somewhat skin to a script. The more you repeat them, the further entrenched you are in the role of someone who would love to change their life yet cannot do so because they are held back by a single factor beyond their control. When I teach my clients to drop the buts and swap them for and instead, I usually see a rapid transformation. Within a few minutes, this mindset shift start to show in their expression. Hope replaces desperation as they realize that the way you frame a situation make all the difference when coming up with the solution to a challenge. Another problem with using but can also make people defensive. As soon as we hear that little word, most of us assume that criticism or bad news is on the horizon. For instance, if you were to tell someone that you understand their point but want to use another approach, they are likely to feel threatened and criticized. However, telling them that you understand their views and want to use another strategy will manually elicit a more positive response. It implies that you value their input even though you won't put it into action. This technique generates a sense of closeness and mutual allegiance. 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 Simply putting it on the end of a negative statement can transform its meaning. Let us look at a few examples. I don't know enough about this topic to pass the exam. I don't know enough about this topic to pass the exam yet. I can't get a girlfriend. I can't get a girlfriend yet. I just don't earn enough money to buy a house. I just don't earn enough money to buy a house yet. Using yet signals to yourself and others that you haven't given up. You are acknowledging that things might change. You may not understand exactly how you will make these changes come to pass, but you are at least open to possibility. It is immediately transform you into a more positive, optimistic person, at least in the eyes of others. This technique doesn't just work in conversation, it is also effective when it comes to your own self talk. It promotes a sense of positivity and potential while still encouraging you to remain realistic. It acknowledges your current situation and problem but make it clear that you are on the right track. Put it into practice. There are two exercises for you to try today. Whenever you catch yourself making a negative statement that includes the word but, substitute and instead. Don't be surprised if your optimism turns out to be contagious. This one little change will make you sound confident and positive. This will inspire others. If you aren't able to try this out in conversation, use it as a generalizing exercise instead. Give yourself 5 minutes to write down any but statement you have been making recently. What happens if you use and instead of but? Personally, I feel less helpless in the face of my difficulties when I make this simply swap. Exercise 2. You go on a yet hunt. Whenever you make a negative statement or a bemoan that you are lacking some kind of resource, stick a yet on the end. You could also silently add a yet to the end of other people's sentences and see for yourself how it changes their meaning. You might be tempted to start telling others that they would feel better if they started using yet more often, but this is best avoided unless you are certain they value constructive feedback. दैट्स ऑल फॉर द डे. आज हमने डे डे टू यानी चैप्टर 2 से लेकर चैप्टर 5 तक ख़त्म कर लिया. अब हम नेक्स्ट चैप्टर पढ़ेंगे टुमारो. वॉच योर प्रोनाउंस. थैंक यू सो मच फॉर बीइंग विद मी. दैट्स ऑल फॉर द डे. अब आप सभी को राधे राधे एंड गुड नाइट। बाय बाय। फिर मिलेंगे।